day. And so the good doctor that tried to help him said, we'll take you off of Valium and we'll put you on methadone. Now, methadone, by the way, is a much harder addiction to break than almost anything you can think of. It's a very, very difficult thing. But being a courageous guy, he locked himself inside of a room, threw the key outside the window to his brother, and said, don't let me out for 4 days. He sweated, he hallucinated, he overcame the difficulty. He got out and broke his own addiction. He had the courage to do that. But when he walked out, he was 3 days later, he went back to his own house. He walked in, opened the medicine cabinet, and there was the bottle of pills. And inside his mind, he still felt drawn to the pills, not drawn to the image where he saw himself being the way he'd like to be. But if you saw yourself instead playing with your dog with abandonment and realizing you could smell the flowers more, and a friend of yours walks up and offers you a Marlboro, and when the Marlboros come up, instead of feeling the same old feeling, you begin to see the image of yourself the way you want to be, and to realize every moment of choice is important. Every moment of your life is important. Now, I'm going to reach over now, and I'm just going to lift up your left arm. And I'm not going to tell you to put it down any faster. Then your unconscious begins to make some adjustments. The adjustments I want you to make are very simple. The feeling that goes with any addiction is a biological feeling. It's because as the nicotine dissipates from your system, the craving begins to come up. But cravings are odd, because in order to have a craving, you have to know what you're craving. Because when the craving comes up, if you're addicted to nicotine, you don't suddenly start craving things and then turn around and start smoking cars. You don't stick a tube out of the tailpipe of an automobile and inhale carbon monoxide. But sometimes people instead begin to overeat, or they begin to do something else to fill the craving, when there's something so much better to fill it with. The feeling that you were spinning inside you, the feeling of desire, the desire to be the way that you want to be, if you start to spin that faster and faster, and as your hand goes down, I want your unconscious to create that feeling and to multiply the need for a cigarette. To take it and make it more and more intense, but only at the rate and speed that you're able to begin to spin the good feeling and fill the addictive need, so that you can begin to fill your addiction with your desires of how you would like to be. That's right, slow down now, not so fast. There's no hurry. Some things take time. And I want you to take the time to begin to make these changes in a way that will only stay with you for the rest of your life. So that when you're faced with the very thing, for the next 3 weeks, I don't care what anyone says, from time to time you'll get the same old feelings, and you'll look at the same old things. And when the same old things happen, then you're going to begin to feel the same needs, only there'll be one different. You'll have the ability to stop for one instance and laugh. That moment of interruption is the most important, and I know you can laugh better than that. There we go. Now, when you have us laughed at that, and you look at this little thing, whether it's somebody's handing you a cigarette, or there's an ashtray, or the smell of tobacco in a room, and you start to laugh, that's the moment at which you can begin to spin that feeling and remember how you want to be, not just today, but tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. You don't want to set a bad example for those around you. Next thing you know, your dog will be in the backyard smoking cigarettes. Just think you're about to become an ant, and you want to set a bad example? You have to show people that choices are possible. The best way of doing things to show people the best ways to live are to go first. I recommend this all the time. Now, in a moment, your hand is going to touch your knee, but not yet. I want it to stop for a moment, and I want the struggle to begin. Because the struggle that you feel inside right now is what it takes to begin to whirl up a strong enough desire a big enough smile that when faced with the worst of situations, so that as you see in your mind the package of cigarettes marching up to you, calling out to you as you go to bed, calling out to you in the morning, calling out to you after a meal, being behind the counter in every store you go in, you will be constantly faced with these things. If you add to that that old addictive feeling, the thing that you'd given into in the past, but you didn't give into it in quite the same way. This time, rather than fighting with it, you're going to just smile at it and let the feeling build up. Because you see, any feeling of a strong desire doesn't mean you have to act on it. Why, if I think of the number of times I really desired to smack somebody up the side of the head and didn't. I was in Selfridges the other day and somebody was ringing up 2 items and it took them so long to do it, I wanted to reach across the counter and just smack them. But instead of doing it, I didn't act on that desire. This is what makes us conscious human beings. And the fact that desire is there, if you can smile and recognize it, it means that you can be free and not have to act on it. When your unconscious is ready, then I want your hand to suddenly drop down to your knee, your thigh, that's right, and go deeper and deeper. Because I want you to go into a deep enough state to make the adjustments in such a way that your unconscious will allow them to stay for the rest of your life. So it's time to do a little rehearsing. And I think rehearsing is an important part of learning. When I was in college, I got a job running a staple machine. And I put a book on a piece of cardboard and I folded it over and I went and I stapled one side and I went and stapled the other side. And I did that for 8 hours my first day, and I went home that night and I did it for another 8 hours while I slept. In fact, I did it 8 hours the next day and 8 hours the next night. Suddenly I began to have my nights free because as the behavior became automatic, by rehearsing it in my mind. Now you could do it in regular sleep, or you can do it in a dream state. If in your dream state right now you begin to dream a dream in which your desires become realities, it's time to test yourself. Think of all the times and places where cigarettes were irresistible. And each time you see that situation occur, remember it's time to smile and to laugh. And then remember what you desire to be like. And to remember to make your desires bigger and stronger and to spin that feeling inside of you and then move on to the next situation. I'm sure in the course of the next 3 weeks, there's got to be a myriad of situations which would test you. In fact, if you think about the rest of your life, there's even going to be times where you'll be tested truly. Bad things will happen. Emergencies will occur. Suddenly you'll get really nervous in certain situations and you'll want to go back to the old things. So let your imagination take you through the things that would be difficult. Don't test yourself lightly, but the harder the situation is, the broader the smile. That's right. You forget to smile, well, then you have to go back in the old situation. But the more you smile, the more you take the good feelings and overwhelm the difficulties, the more you'll be able to deal with almost anything in life. Now, I want you to take a few moments and I want you to run through a number of scenarios. Let your unconscious come up with tough things. Perhaps you could even run through some of the memories where you were unable to cope. You said you quit smoking once, something started you again. Run back through it. And if this time you take your sense of humor with you, you may discover it's not as overwhelming as you thought it was. I know that sometimes we develop these things, but you need to run this over and over and over and over again till it becomes a new habit. It's not that habits are a bad thing. In fact, we have a lot of good habits. I wandered into the bathroom this morning, and before I was even conscious, I was brushing my teeth. Somehow or other, I learned to do it as a kid. I don't walk in and pick up the toothbrush and stick it in my eye, although sometimes I come close. You know what a toothbrush is, and it's an automatic behavior. When you meet somebody and they extend their hand to you and say hello, unconsciously your hand lifts up. You shake their hand because it's an automatic behavior. It's when these behaviors become ones that we don't want that we need inside our mind to begin to back things up. So while your unconscious tests you with things that are difficult, remember to smile, remember the desires, and keep running it over and over again. Now, when I'm talking to you, you'll know because my voice will be directed at you. And when I'm not talking at you, I want you to keep running scenarios, coming up with more and more difficult things, and looking at cigarettes as what they are, something in your past. Hi, Kate. How you doing?
Hi, good.
I had a couple questions I wanted to ask you. One is that you told me that you started doing this when you were, what, 13?
Yeah, maybe even younger.
Might even be younger. You don't even remember. Because I noticed when we were sitting here that when we first got here that you were picking at your cuticles. Is this part of the whole thing? Or?
No, I don't really pick at them, but I just run my fingers around the edges of my nails. I'm sort of very conscious of them.
So you're conscious of your fingernails. Yeah. So, and how do you know when it's time to bite them?
Well, I'm not really very conscious of biting them. That's the problem for me. I mean, a lot of friends say, oh, I never imagine you as a nail biter. But it's generally if I'm watching TV or driving or worried about something, then I'll start to bite. So,
like, what kind of thing would you have to worry about? You don't have to give us a lot of detail. Like, just think about it. What's something you would...
Anything that sort of puts me into deep thought, I'll probably automatically start.
But without telling us what it is, because I sort of have this thing about privacy. I figure the best way to have privacy in your life is don't tell people things. I know it's old-fashioned. Psychiatrists want to know everything about you. I never forget the first time I watched a psychiatrist working with this person. And I started asking this woman about her childhood. And he said, and when you were a child, do you remember any sexual fantasies? And I thought, I said, I could barely remember being a child, let alone sitting around in a crib having sexual fantasies. And then I read Sigmund Freud, and I changed his name to Sick Man Fraud because it seemed to me a little bizarre. But if you just stop, can you think of one thing inside your mind? You don't have to tell us what it is. That would be like a nail-biting thing. Okay, when you think of it, where's the picture? Can you point to it? Okay, so the picture is up there. And like when you think of things that are relaxing things, like you've probably been on some nice vacations which were really relaxing and things like that. When you think about that, where's that picture?
Straight in front.
Okay, so one's straight in front and one is kind of up here a little bit. Okay, now just as an experiment, because sometimes when people run automatic behaviors, one of the things that happens is like you say, especially if you're lost in thought, is that they have a tendency to access a whole different sequence. Some sequences trigger habits and some sequences don't. And I'm kind of sneaky. When I'm working with one person, that means I watch the other. So I kind of have a guess that this might happen. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is first go and look at the first picture, the nail-biting picture. And when you look at the picture, I want you to double the size of it and double it again. Does that make your fingers feel more sensitive when you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, now look at the relaxing picture. Okay, now double the size of that one. Turn the volume up, turn the brightness up, and double the size of it again. Does it do just the opposite? Mm-hmm. Now, here's the tricky part. It means that you almost have your own remote control inside your mind. Because if your fingers became very sensitive, then, either rubbing them or biting them would be something. In fact, if anything, I noticed years ago, I got up one morning because I had a date with a really pretty girl. I was in high school, and I got up and I had a zit right here on my nose. Came out of the middle of nowhere. And suddenly, my whole day, that's all I could think about was that spot. So I kept rubbing it. So by the end of the day, it was like half a nose big. And the more we focus our consciousness on something, the more it becomes sensitized. Now, I don't know, have you had any experience with hypnosis? I don't really know you.
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay, so you have been in trances. Actually, you
Yes,
said
I
you
have.
were lost in thought. I love that phrase. I'm going to memorize that. Next time I talk to people, I'm going to tell them, you know, your problems, just get lost in thought. Because if you were lost in thought and you lost your problems, you wouldn't have to worry about them.
Right.
Okay, now what I'm going to ask you to do is take your hands and go like this, okay? Just rub them together, okay? Okay, see if we just get a different feeling going in your hands, just as a change of pace. Then I want you to hold them up like this, okay? Fingers apart, like this. Put the palms together, right? Put your fingers closed like this, right? And then open these two fingers, all right? And then stare straight between them. And as you stare between them, your fingers are going to start getting pulled together. And they'll get pulled closer and closer. And as you feel them getting pulled closer together, you realize your unconscious is about ready to drop you into a deep trance. And when it does, you're simply going to relax, take a deep breath, and suddenly get a good feeling. Because you know that by looking there, you go, close your eyes now. That's right. And I want your unconscious to realize that sensitizing something makes it so you pay attention to it. The nail-biting picture got bigger, the feeling in your fingers got stronger. But the good memories inside your life can become bigger and stronger. And there is an unusual thing in that if you become aware of the end of your nose, your right shoulder, your left shoulder, your right knee, your left knee, your little toe. In fact, at this moment in time, you had just told me a few moments ago that you were pregnant, very pregnant. You're going through the past 9 months through all kinds of biological challenges. You had to grow a whole human being. This requires vast resources. If you're able to do such powerful biological things, it should be a simple matter of going inside your mind and going and being able to look at all the various things that you get lost in thought doing, and to realize the more you come to your senses, the more those pictures will shrink. If you look at the picture that I told you to make bigger and it made it so your fingers got more